Hi, my name is Pat, and this is my channel, Book Chat with Pat, and I'm glad that you're here. Today I wanted to give some reflections on the experience of reading James Joyce's novel, Finnegans Wake, over the last 3 months. I have been trying to think of a way to talk about this reading experience for several weeks now. I keep talking about Finnegans Wake in my weekly wrap-ups and, in various videos that I've been putting out for the last couple of months, but I feel like I never quite do justice to the experience of reading this novel, and I wanted to try again to say something about this powerful experience. Now that we are wrapping up our 3-month group read of Joyce's final novel. This is a book that took him 17 years to complete. When I finished the book the other day, I felt positively bereft at the thought that this reading experience was coming to an end. Part of that is just from having lived with this text and several other ancillary texts that I'm reading along with it, for the past 3 months. Another part of it, though, and I think the bigger and more important part of it, is that I was reading this book with a delightful group of people. We were organized by the great Roy at Roy Reads Anything, and it was a group of booktubers and subscribers and commenters, and we're not exactly sure how many people were in the group, but Roy was calling it the Finnegans 15. After last summer we read, a smaller group read Ulysses together, and we were the Ulysses 6. It's always hard for me to let go of a group after a group reading experience, especially one that takes place over a long period of time. And we've been reading Finnegans Wake since the beginning of April. So that's definitely part of it. It's just hard for something like that to it's hard to bring something like that to closure. Joyce was definitely one of the leading figures of the modernist movement in literature. It's a literary movement that really came into being after and largely in response to the devastation of World War I. Writers and artists, artists of all kinds, experimented with form and style. And one of the methods of experimentation was the use of stream of consciousness as a narrative form. And that is something, stream of consciousness, that Joyce brings to an entirely new level in this novel. Ulysses has a lot of stream of consciousness in it also. Finnegans Wake is a whole new level. Some people would say that it's unintelligible, and I certainly am one who believed that. That's how I always saw this book. I must have tried to read it somewhere along the line and decided this is not going to happen. And I know that I've said that in videos in the past, that was a book I would never try to read. And then something changed, and I tried to read it, and I read it, and I probably will read it again. The novel starts in the middle of a sentence that isn't finished until we get to the end of the book. And we find the beginning of that sentence at the end of the book, and then it ends in the middle of a sentence, which loops back to the beginning again. And so we begin again. We enter into the story in medias res. We are in the middle. We are in a world that has existed long before we've opened the book and started to turn the pages. The language is unlike anything I've ever read before. It is very difficult. It's also very musical. This is a wonderful book to listen to. The text is filled with words that I didn't know. It's filled with made-up words. It's filled with words that were made by combining a whole bunch of words together. There are a bunch of thunder words which go on and on and on and on for syllable after syllable after syllable. There are words in foreign languages as well. And the whole thing is a dream. We're inside somebody's dream. We're walking around a dreamscape. Joyce uses a music hall ballad entitled Finnegans Wake as the jumping off point for his story, sort of. And then that's a story that gets told and retold and reshaped all throughout the rest of the novel. In the ballad, there's a character named Tim Finnegan, who was a Dublin bricklayer. It sounds like a word in this book. A bricklayer who loves to have his drinks of alcohol. And one day he went for his morning drink before work and then went to work, and he fell off a ladder and he cracked open his skull and he died. So his friends host a boisterous wake for him, and they put a gallon of whiskey at his feet and a barrel of porter at his head. And the mourners are drinking to him and drinking to each other, and they accidentally spill whiskey on the corpse, which awakens Tim Finnegan. And he sits up and he addresses the crowd. This somehow becomes a metaphor for great falls and risings all through the novel. Falls of great heroes, great gods in mythology, great legendary figures, even great civilizations. Tim is told by the mourners to lie back down and rest, and thus a new era begins. Our main characters in the novel are a publican named Mr. Porter and his wife, Mrs. Porter, and they are both asleep throughout the novel. They're sleeping, they're dreaming. In the course of the dream, they transform into various other characters. Some of them are historical figures. Some of them are mythological figures. Some of them are just other made-up literary characters that Joyce has created. Mr. Porter primarily appears throughout the dream as Humphrey Chimpton Earwicker, or HCE. Like Tim Finnegan, Earwicker has also experienced a fall, but his fall is a different kind of fall. He didn't fall off a ladder or a wall. Rather, his is the commission of some sexual indiscretion in a local park. And supposedly, whatever it is that he did in front of a group of young girls, and it was witnessed by at least 3 soldiers. All of these characters appear and reappear in different shapes and forms throughout the book. Earwicker appears throughout the narrative whenever we see the letters HCE. They're repeatedly interwoven throughout the sentences. We know that it's Earwicker when the character speaks, if he speaks with a distinctive stutter. Sometimes HCE is compared to mythological or literary figures. He's compared to Adam of the Bible, of the Genesis story. He's compared to Finn McCool of Irish legend. He's compared to Charles Parnell of Irish history. Now, the publican's wife, Mrs. Porter, appears in the dream as Anna Livia Plurabelle, or ALP. So whenever we see those letters, we know that this is a reference to her, even if she's not being called Anna. She is depicted as both a woman and as a river, and specifically as the river Liffey, which flows right through the center of Dublin. She too morphs into several other characters in the course of the dream, sometimes literary, sometimes mythological, sometimes historical. Some of the characters that she appears as, one is her daughter. Sometimes she comes into the dream as her daughter, Isabel. Sometimes she is Saint Bridget, one of the patron saints of Ireland. Sometimes she appears as Isolde or Isolde from the Irish legend of Tristram and Isolde. The Porters also have 3 children, and they are children in the dream and in the novel. They have twin sons named Jerry and Kevin, and a daughter named Isabel. They are featured all throughout the dream as well, but often Jerry and Kevin are represented not as Jerry and Kevin, but rather as Shem and Sean, and they are always depicted as 2 opposing forces. This is the briefest of sketches of what this is sort of about and who the main characters are. I'm not even scratching the surface here, but I feel like I need a language with which to talk about this book. What struck me about the novel, more than anything about these characters, is that Joyce is really trying to create here what the world of the unconscious mind looks like. And the unconscious mind is revealed in sleep. It's revealed in dreams. To do this, he had to find new ways to use language. Joseph Campbell, in his Skeleton Key Guide, said of the function of dreams, quote, "Our dreams cloak in acceptable disguise messages too horrid with guilt, too stained with unsocial blood to be admitted to the chambers of day. Only during sleep do these apparitions stream forth to enact hooded mimes of fear and desire." It would seem that that's what Joyce is trying to do here in this novel. Campbell goes on in his book to talk about the prodigious effort required of the artist, of the writer, to write in this way, to use language in this way. And Campbell also says that a similar prodigious effort is required of the reader if we are to reach these deeper levels of understanding and of experience and of consciousness. That, I think, describes for me why people spend years reading this book. There have been all kinds of articles lately about different groups that have been reading this book for 12 years, for 14 years, for 20 years, more than 20 years. Sometimes they meet once a week, sometimes they meet once a month, but they come together and they take apart just a little tiny piece of the narrative. That's why, because this is really a portrait of the unconscious. And I think that's why I found our group experience such a powerful one as well. And we've only scratched the surface of this novel. I don't know that I could do this justice in a video of just a couple of minutes. But I didn't want to leave the experience of this read-along without trying to talk a little bit about what was so meaningful and so powerful to me about reading this book. And I think it is also related, as I've talked about many times, it's related to my trip to Ireland last fall, where I really did get in touch with my ancestral past and really the ancient past of Ireland, and in ways that I never anticipated. And I think that also is part of why this book, which is really about history and the rise and fall of history and civilizations, and I think that's why this is resonating so deeply with me. I think this is a book I said I'd never read. I think this is a book I will return to again and again. So that's a little bit about what was so important to me about Finnegans Wake. As always, I thank you for watching. I hope that you're doing well. I'll speak with you again soon. Take care.